Today on the agenda, the first Latino to serve as D.C. State Superintendent of Education. How will his appointment impact an infamously troubled system? And Ted Cruz wishes there were more Jesse Helms in the Senate? That and more today on the agenda.
Welcome to the agenda, Washington's only bilingual news program. I'm Alejandro Negro. On the agenda today, in the wake of the Navy Yard shooting, will the debate on gun control reemerge? We'll ask our political panel. But first, in less than 2 weeks, the District of Columbia's Office of the State Superintendent of Education will have a new leader, the first Latino to serve in this capacity. ABC 7 reporter Hatzel Vela introduces us to Jesus Aguirre.
It's a return to education for Jesus Aguirre. Starting October 1st, Aguirre will be the State Superintendent of Education in D.C. He'll be in charge of the fairly new agency, which mainly oversees that federal education policies are enforced at the local level. That includes overseeing and reporting standardized testing results. Federal funding to all D.C. schools also comes through his office.
The challenge is figuring out and making sure that the public understands sort of the role of each of these institutions.
Aguirre also wants to make sure that whatever he does always points to how it supports education for every single child.
How do we provide support to make sure that the schools have what they need to be able to continue improving those scores?
Before being the director at the Parks and Recreation Department, Aguirre worked for the Office of School Operations at the District of Columbia Public Schools, which helped principals focus more on the instruction instead of operations. Aguirre also oversaw security, technology, and food service at D.C. public schools.
School leaders have, they make literally hundreds of decisions on a daily basis, and I want more of those decisions to be about instruction and less of them to be about whether there's issues with the operational side of things.
Aguirre started his education career as a teacher in Los Angeles, working in the Teach for America program. He then helped train first-year teachers in the same program. He and his wife then moved to Arizona, where they started a charter school. All that, he says, is what has prepared him for his new role.
Let's make sure that every decision we're making is good for kids and good for their education.
We now want to welcome Hatzel Vela, ABC 7 reporter, to Agenda. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
As we saw in your report, one of his main concerns is that the public understands the role of his office. How will the 45,000 plus students that attend DC schools be impacted by his appointment?
Well, Alejandro, I think the role is very critical because as state superintendent, he oversees all schools, not just DC schools, but also charter schools. So it's a major role, and he's also sort of the gatekeeper when it comes to federal funding and federal policies.
And standardized testing.
Which is very important, we've seen in the past few years.
And let's talk a little bit about standardized testing. There is good news. It's good news to report proficiency rates in math and reading have increased in the past year to 51%. But there's a lot of work to be done. How hard is the task ahead of?
I think he knows that there is a challenge and that he wants to work on that specifically. So we'll see what happens.
I wanted to talk about Jesus Aguirre's background. Who is Jesus Aguirre? Please tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, we know he was born in Mexico, raised in Houston, is married with 3 kids, and he was adamant about saying that all his 3 kids go to public schools, which is why he says he's committed to his job.
But at the same time, he was one of the founders, one of the first charter schools in Arizona. How do you think that's going to impact his decision-making process?
Sure, I think it helps him tremendously because we don't only see regular schools here in D.C., but we also see charter schools, so he knows both systems.
How is his appointment being received by the community, not only the Hispanic community, but D.C. At large?
I want to say so far so good, but we're going to see what happens once he takes over, once we start seeing what happens with the kind of work that he does.
Hatzel Vela, thank you so much for your report.
Thank you.
And Hatzel will be back with us on our roundtable discussion a little later on. Coming up on the agenda, our roundtable discusses this week's tragic shooting at the Navy Yard and other stories that caught their attention. But first, our political panel on Mayor Vincent Gray's veto of the so-called living wage bill. That and more. Don't go away. Welcome back to the agenda. Joining us today on the political panel are Judy Pino of the LIBRE Initiative with a view from the right and Jose Suero, publisher of MetroDiversity.com from the left. Welcome all to the agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Vincent Gray vetoed the living wage bill. The city council couldn't override the veto, and now they're going to focus on raising the city's minimum wage. Jose Suero, I want to start with you. The argument goes that if you were to force mega retailers like Walmart to pay a so-called living wage bill at $12.50, DC will not be able to attract these retailers, and the district won't benefit from the jobs that will be created by them. How do you see it?
Well, I mean, I think we were commenting that Safeway and Giant pays their people roughly $12.50 an hour, and we know that Costco has an average pay to their employees that's somewhere around $19. This whole argument about don't raise the minimum wage is a farcical one. We all know that if you raise the minimum wage, everybody benefits.
Now, Judy Pino, Giant and Safeway, as Jose Suero suggested, pay an average cashier about $12, the Washington Post reported, because they're willing to work with unions who have negotiated on behalf of their workers. They seem to be doing well. Why wouldn't Walmart be able to thrive in D.C.? Paying $12.50.
I mean, I think history has shown, as well-intentioned as it may seem, Alejandro, unfortunately, raising the minimum wage, especially now at a time where the economy is slowly recuperating, but I think businesses are still trying to stay above water. Raising the minimum wage only impacts and affects negatively the people that it's meant to help out. I mean, businesses will cut down on their hiring, and it was a big statement from Walmart. Hey, we're not coming here because you're making it difficult for us to do business. Unfortunately, that's the way it is.
But there's a bigger issue here. It's not only about D.C. Walmart does not want to give the city council this win because then they will have to do the same in other municipalities that are thinking again of a living wage bill, Jose Suero.
But of course, see, this whole thing is such a false argument, this issue that it's going to negatively affect. California just increased its minimum wage. Washington, D.C. will increase its minimum wage. When you increase the minimum wage, people have more money to spend, they spend more on the economy, and there are more jobs, not less.
But you can't.
California is a really bad example, Jose, because California, people are voting with their feet. They're leaving California. You have a few cities that have gone bankrupt. So it's a really bad example. Let's talk about Texas. Texas has a great economic model. Texas was voted in Forbes as having the best cities with the best jobs. Why? Because no state tax, very pro-business, and that is what drives the economy. That is what creates jobs.
How about that argument? Businesses will stop hiring or do less with more. Will do more with less people.
Well, I mean, I'm not an expert on the Texas model, but paying everybody to live in poverty is not what I call. But even in California, that's a false argument as well. California is among the most populous states in the nation, and it's been proven that raising the rate, the minimum wage, helps the economy. You can't. I mean, you have to cherry pick information to make an argument for the opposite.
Judy Pino.
Just ask the people that are leaving the state. Same thing with New York. When you make it difficult for businesses to thrive, when you add on regulation, when you add on more taxes, you make it very difficult. So, and what happens is you have the counter effect. Instead of creating jobs, businesses start cutting hours, and they stop creating jobs, or they just don't do business in your state. So, you know, you be the judge.
Well, this was a great discussion. I want to switch topics. This week, we were the victims of yet another mass shooting. This time right here in our city. A guy that should have never been able to own a gun murdered 12 innocent people. Do you see the debate, is the debate about gun control going to reemerge in the Congress?
Alejandro, this is a great tragedy for every American. This is an American tragedy, no matter which way you look at it. Harry Reid has already said they just don't have the votes to bring this back up again. And the reason why is because they see that most Americans want to hang on to their Second Amendment.
But most Americans agree that we need expanded background checks.
Well,
I mean, the polls are clear on this.
Yeah, I'll give you that, but I think there needs to be some common sense where we don't trample all over the Second Amendment and people who are correct and law-abiding citizens to defend themselves. That's part of what happened at the Navy Yard. It's part of what happened at Fort Hood. The employees there, according to an executive order back in President Clinton's years, they cannot carry guns. They were kind of sitting ducks, you know. And to a certain extent, I'll tell you that the states that have the toughest gun control, the ones where we're seeing these tragedies, Connecticut, and Chicago.
Jose Suero, Harry Reid said he does not have the votes for expanded gun control legislation. What then can the government do to protect the public from mentally ill people that wake up one morning and decide to kill? I mean, the argument is that this is not a problem about guns, it's about people who are mentally ill using a gun to commit these crimes. What else can the government do?
Yeah, I'm astonished to hear Judy talk about common sense and their argument in the same sentence. It's an oxymoron. We are the only country in the world that arms our people to the teeth. And she talks about Connecticut or D.C. The assault rifle that he used was bought in Virginia. He went twice. The second time, he was able to buy it LIBRE, free, without anybody doing anything. We must control guns.
Judy Pino, I'll give you a chance to respond to that, and then we'll go.
When I say common sense, I think everybody should be looking out for people that have these kinds of problems, people at work, and just socially, you need to know who's around you.
Thank you, panel. That was a very interesting discussion. When we come back, the stories that caught the attention of our reporters on the roundtable, including this. Do we need more Jesse Helms in the Senate? Senator Ted Cruz thinks so. Our panel will try to decipher that message next. Welcome back to The Agenda. Joining us on our roundtable today and sharing their thoughts on stories that caught their attention this week are ABC 7 reporter Hatzel Vela, Telemundo Washington's Juliana Monsalve, and Alberto Avendaño of El Tiempo Latino. Welcome all to The Agenda.
Thank you.
Hatzel, I'll start with you. What a way to start the week. What a sad way to start the week. Could you please put the whole Navy Yard shooting in perspective for our viewers?
Yeah, obviously, Alejandro, a very tragic event. We don't know yet the motive of what was behind this shooter, but we know is that just in early August, he was at a hotel in Rhode Island, called police, complaining that he could hear voices and that someone was following him. It's obvious that he had mental issues, and now we're seeing the consequences. The Secretary of Defense calling for a review of security at all military installations. Obviously still unfolding. We're going to see much more in the coming days and weeks.
Does anyone in the panel see a reemerge in the gun debate in the Congress?
Well,
will it reemerge, the debate on gun control?
It always happens. My concern right away is about our everyday lives, how that gets affected, how the implementation of security measures potentially in our area are going to impact us personally in our daily lives. But I am also worried about the impact on delaying the process of important issues in Congress. I'm thinking of immigration debate. I'm thinking of other issues, the budget. We need to focus to understand that an incident cannot change important issues in our community and in our nation.
So we shouldn't react to those events? Well, we shouldn't be too reactive, in your opinion?
Well, it's not about being reactive or not being reactive. It is about you. It's like a boxer. You have to assimilate the punch. It's tough at the community level. It's tough for those families. My heart goes to those families. It has to be a terrifying experience. We receive, as we were covering this in El Tiempo Latino, we receive all these comments from friends and families that knew somebody in the area, and everybody was concerned. So it's not about that. It's about analyzing how this kind of emotional and terrifying events can affect issues that are probably more important at a national level.
But I agree with you, Alberto, but this is a debate that needs to happen. And it's proven that when these type of strategies take place, it's when Congress is more willing to talk about, and it's when people call their Congress person and push them to talk about. And this is what happened last year with the shooting at the school.
Yeah.
They talked about it. It pretty much died, and this is kind of a new tragedy, and they do need to address the problem with gun control.
Yeah, but we need to stay out, to jump out of the vicious cycle of the reaction.
Absolutely.
And getting more into implementing real measures and move on, and then don't lose focus on what I call national issues.
No, absolutely. The fact is that Congress needs to work. pretty much, and move the issues.
All right, guys, I want to move on. Recently, Ted Cruz said that he wishes there were 100 more people like the late Jesse Helms in the Senate. What Ted Cruz fails to realize or chooses to ignore is that Jesse Helms probably wouldn't have wanted to see not even one Ted Cruz in the Senate. What's Ted Cruz doing here?
What's he
Why
doing?
Why is he praising a guy that's synonymous with racism?
Well,
how does this help him?
Why does a politician need to make this kind of statements? Doesn't he have more important issues to talk about? The late Jesse Helms was an incredible political figure, whatever you like him or not. He had a fiery and very interesting, compelling, I would say, statements about the Latino community. I mean, for him, I'm sure we were extremely volatile, which is a word he used.
In 1986. Exactly, yeah, he did.
We were probably hot-blooded, which is something I can agree with. My point here is that, I mean, stop it. Why a politician needs to talk about these kind of things?
I just think he wasn't thinking when he didn't do his research, I guess, because that's kind of crazy. How is that going to help him?
Okay, guys, what we're going to do, we're going to pick it up when we come back, because this roundtable is going to be expanded. So we'll be right back and talk about a few other things. Coming up next, what happens when immigrants move into a neighborhood? You might be pleasantly surprised by a recent study. Don't go away. Welcome back to the agenda, and we want to welcome our roundtable panel once again. We're going to discuss this new study that I found very interesting. Good news happens when immigrants move to a community, says a recent study conducted by the American Society Council of the Americas and the Partnership for a New American Economy. One of the things that I saw is that when immigrants move in, they increase the wealth of their county by $92,000. This is a great argument in favor of the Hispanic community and immigrant communities across the United States.
I don't think this is very surprising. I mean, I think if you look at American history, you've seen it decades ago with the Italians, with the Irish. So this new study, while it's nice and it's revealing, I think we can point back to America in its early days, and we've seen it once and once again.
But it's important that we see it now once again, and the now should be in capital letters. What I mean is that, remember that comment of there goes the neighborhood?
Yeah.
I remember I learned that in Texas when I used to live there. Well, you know what, the neighborhood doesn't go anywhere. The neighborhood is here to stay and is here to grow, and to grow successfully. Every month 50,000 50,000 Hispanic kids turn 18 years old. Yes. The Hispanic growth of businesses is the fastest growing segment. The news are there already. The data is there already. You have the Congressional Budget Office talking about how the deficit would be reduced in the billions of dollars by immigration reform. So the Hispanic reality of the United States is, the key word is of. We are not passerbys, we are not visitors, we are part of this community.
No, and I think you're right, because being in the middle of an immigration debate, this is something that needs to be reminded to those who are still dragging their feet about this immigration reform.
Juliana Monsalve, I wanted to ask you, I was reading recently an article that points out that Republicans in Virginia don't feel good about Ken Cuccinelli's chances of winning the governor's race in Virginia. You've been covering that race. Why is he losing? What's the problem with Ken Cuccinelli's campaign in Virginia?
Well, actually, those news came about because many Republicans, hardcore Republicans, were interviewed, and they all agreed that their candidate, Ken Cuccinelli, was actually pretty much losing the elections at this point. If they were held today, he would lose. They pretty much said that the number one reason will be the donations controversy, not only because of Cuccinelli's involvement, but also because of McDonald's, who is the governor of Virginia. So they initially thought McDonald was going to be an asset to the campaign, but it ended up being a major liability. So
but isn't he also having problems that other Republicans are having nationwide, which is basically that the people who support him are mostly white and male, and not minorities and women? How can he fix that.
Here we go again. And should we talk about Hispanics again? The issue is that in Northern Virginia especially, if you have a tight election and you want to be competitive, you have to engage the Hispanic voter. And Mr. Cuccinelli is not doing it.
Well, he brought Marco Rubio this week.
Yeah, thank you.
Is that going to help him?
I'm talking about engaging the Hispanic community. I'm not talking about bringing somebody, so some quota of approach. Call it Marco Rubio, call it a Hispanic group that he is putting together, but I think it's too late. Too little.
Hazelverde, is it too late for the government?
I think he's going to struggle. I mean, the election is around the corner, and we saw what happened with the presidential election and how influential Northern Virginia counties can be.
Thank you, Hazelverde. Thank you, Juliana Monsalve. Thank you, Alberto Avendaño. What a great panel. Well, don't forget that The Agenda is Washington's only bilingual news program. Look for La Agenda en Español on Telemundo. And be sure to join us again next week, right here on News Channel 8. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to keep you in our agenda and that you keep us in your agenda. We'll see you next time.